Good morning, brothers and sisters, and welcome to our daily word from the Lord. And today we want to prepare to wrap up Paul's advice, instructions, and pastoral mentoring to his young pastor, Timothy, who is pastor of Ephesus. And so Paul gives one more serious warning to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6. And this warning is a warning against false teachers who promote a false doctrine of prosperity. This almost sounds as if it could be taken from the front page of the newspapers of today, who expose the dangers and perils and excess and, wrongdoings of those who get caught up in financial impropriety while promoting the gospel of Jesus Christ. This doctrine today is known as the prosperity gospel, and it's not new. Paul identifies it and articulates it very, very clearly in 1 Timothy chapter 6. And Paul's condemnation of the false teachers of his day is relevant for the church today as a warning against those who teach that godliness is a means of great gain. Listen to what Paul says. If anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the teaching that accords with godliness, they are puffed up with conceit and understand nothing. They have an unhealthy craving for controversy and for quarrels about words, which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil, suspicions, and constant friction among people. They are depraved in their mind and deprived of the truth, imagining that godliness is a means of gain. Now there is great gain in godliness with contentment, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we should be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, and into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many, many pangs. Paul wraps up his warning to Timothy with the very famous verse and phrase that is often quoted: the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Paul tells Timothy to avoid those who center the gospel in prosperity and to insist that the lifestyle that honors God is one of godliness with content. In concluding his advice to Timothy, he assures Timothy and he assures us that God has no problem whatsoever with financial prosperity, as long as those who are rich understand the purpose of prosperity, which Paul lays out very, very clearly in 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19. Listen to what he says. As for those who are rich in this world, charge them not to be haughty or to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. And they are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasures for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. So Paul has a very, very healthy, good perspective on money and wealth and prosperity, and warns Timothy that there will be some who will have and promote and and teach the church a wrong teaching on prosperity. And then he provides the right teaching to Timothy. And he tells him in the final analysis, the last verse of 1 Timothy, O Timothy, guard the deposit entrusted to you. Avoid the irreverent babble and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge. For by professing it, some have swayed from the faith. Grace be with you. And that's a good word for us as we prepare to wrap up Paul's warnings in 1 Timothy. 3 times, chapter 2, chapter 4, and chapter 6, Paul warns against false teaching. And it just reminds us of how